we're going to go ahead then, and we're going to think about some other issues having to do with this new territory. All right. So this was the result of the uh, Compromise of 1850. Okay. Uh, what we want to do is think about what was the purpose of the Mexican American War. Why did Polk want the territory in California? Why did Polk want California?
So you could do overseas trade with China.
Right, trade with China, and the reason why was because San Francisco was a great natural harbor, and if the United States could trade with China from San Francisco, that would give them a leg up on the Europeans, right? But the problem is, once you get goods to California from China, how are you going to get it to the east where all the people are? And the answer to that was, well, if you were going to do it by sea, you had to go all the way around South America to do it. There's no Panama Canal, right? so uh, so how are you going to get the goods from actually Sacramento to say Chicago, the east? How are you going to do that? What would be the way to
Railroads.
railroads? Exactly. But here's the problem. Think about this. If you are going to build a railroad, keep in mind that railroads are they're high tech. They're like space shuttles today, right? Okay. So you're going to build a high tech railroad. In fact, Americans didn't know how to build railroads. They had to hire British companies to do it, right? But you're going to build a railroad from, say, Chicago to Sacramento, but it's going to go across territory that's unorganized, where that's occupied by hostile natives. Is that going to seem like a reasonable investment? Do you think it would be a good idea to invest in a really high tech project that's going to go through unorganized territory that's occupied by hostile natives?
No.
No. All right. So that's when Congress decides um, to organize what was left of the Louisiana Purchase. Okay, and that's this territory that you see here. They divided into two territories, Nebraska and Kansas. Okay, um, and when Kansas was was made a territory, it was decided that it would be admitted by popular sovereignty, right? Popular sovereignty means that whatever they decide, whether they want to be slave or free, they can be admitted, okay? Now, let's think about it, see if we can remember how is it that states are incorporated into the Union. Well, let me just say this. Okay, states are incorporated into the Union according to the Northwest Ordinance, which was written before the Constitution. And in that, it specifies that the Congress creates a territory and appoints a governor, and then people move into the territory. And once they have reached a certain population, then they have a Congress write a constitution, and then they can apply for admission to the Union. And then when they do apply, they either apply as slave or free. Okay, at this point, you guys are following me here? That's how it works. There's only 15 states that weren't added to the Union that way. The original 13 colonies were directly part of the United States. What were the other two states? What were the other two states that never became a territory before they were admitted to the Union?
Was one of them Louisiana?
No, Louisiana was a territory. How about doing this? Take a look, just look down at the floor.
Florida?
What I said, look down at the floor. What state is that?
California.
California was one of them. California was it already
Oregon.
No, not Oregon. We've learned about it already. The Alamo and the Republic of
Texas.
Texas, right? So Texas and California. were the only other two states that were added without being a territory. Okay, you guys are with me? Questions, comments? All right, so now they passed this Kansas-Nebraska Act. Kansas is organized as a territory. People start to move in. All right, now it says here supported by Southerners and denounced by Northerners. Okay, that's true, right? Why would it be supported by Southerners? Why would the Kansas-Nebraska Act be supported by slave interests? Because,
Nebraska is above the Missouri Compromise line.
well, we're talking about Kansas now, but yeah, Kansas is above that line. And because of popular sovereignty, what does that mean? Can Kansas be a slave state?
It could be if people choose.
Right, it could be if people choose. Okay. All right. So slave interests are going to be interested in that because they think that Kansas could possibly be a slave state, but Northerners are going to be against it. And why would they be against it?
Because they hold abolitionist views and they're above, and they see it as being above the Missouri Compromise.
Well, the first one is not that big of a deal. All right. So there are a number of abolitionists. There's abolitionism is kind of a new, I guess you could say, attitude among many people in the North, but most people don't care about slavery one way or the other, right? Because it doesn't affect them. The major problem with admitting new
Voting.
states has to do with representation in Congress, right? Exactly. Okay. So, and then it erases the Missouri Compromise line. All right. So we'll just leave it at that. Okay. You guys are with me? But here's the problem. The problem is that because it's going to be settled by popular sovereignty, then both the slave interest and the free interest have incentive to send more people who are in favor of or opposed to slavery. You guys are with me? And so what happens is that there's a mass movement of people from both the North and the South into Kansas, with the idea being that whoever can get the most people living there will be able to choose whether it's slave or free. You guys are with me? Questions, comments about this? Okay, well, here's the problem, that it's going to become obvious to these people that neither side is going to be able to gain a meaningful advantage over the other in terms of numbers. And so the next best thing is to kill everybody on the other side. So what happens is that there's a war that breaks out in Kansas in the late 1850s between slave interests and free interests. Okay, so you can kind of think about it as the Civil War has already started before the Civil War started. It's because they're already fighting about this in Kansas, and the slave interests are sending troops and weapons, and the free interests are also sending troops and weapons, and it becomes brutal. And that's why they call it Bleeding Kansas. You guys follow what I'm saying? Questions about this? All right, now, how many of you guys have heard of John Brown? That's discouraging to me because John Brown was a very important individual in American history. He was probably mostly seen by most of the good people as a criminal, right? And he was actually, if you think about it, he was a rabid abolitionist, meaning that he was absolutely uncompromising on the issue that slavery should be abolished. And his idea of how to abolish slavery was to kill all the slave owners, right? So in Kansas, he becomes very important as a leader of the abolitionists. And he and his sons are involved in an incident called the Pottawatomie Creek Massacre, where they actually murder a bunch of slave owners with axes, right? Okay, so now if you guys have looked at this picture probably every day before you start the class, because this is the image, I guess, for this course. this guy standing here in the middle, who is he? That's John Brown, right? And this is a great, actually, image of the issue of bleeding Kansas. It was done earlier. It's called Tragic Prelude. Prelude to what? Prelude to the Civil War. But you can see already the Union forces and the Confederate forces fighting against each other. Okay, you guys are with me? Questions, comments about this?